There is something you've been feeling for a while, a silent discomfort you can't name. It's a knot in your chest, a heaviness that isn't fatigue or stress. It lingers like a shadow, whispering that something is wrong. You've tried to ignore it, to swallow it down, to rationalize it away, but it persists. It's the residue of too many times you've bent to avoid breaking, too many moments you've silenced your voice to keep the peace. You've been taught to endure, to tolerate, to accept, but what if this very tolerance is what's killing you? Carl Jung, the pioneering psychologist who mapped the uncharted territories of the human psyche, warned us about this. He saw how the soul rots when we allow the unacceptable to fester in silence. His work wasn't about diagnosing grand traumas, but exposing the slow, insidious poison of everyday compromises. The small betrayals of self that accumulate until one day you look in the mirror and no longer recognize the face staring back. This isn't about morality, it's about survival. The question isn't what's wrong with you. The question is, what have you allowed to happen to you? Society applauds tolerance. We're praised for being easygoing, for not making waves. But Jung revealed a terrifying truth. What you tolerate doesn't just stay, it grows. It embeds itself in your psyche, warping your instincts until the abnormal feels normal. The first step into this labyrinth is subtle, often disguised as love or concern. It starts with a sentence. I'm only saying this because I care. If you loved me, you'd. The words sound gentle, but their undercurrent is control. Manipulators don't need force. They weaponize your empathy. They frame their demands as concern, their criticism as kindness. Over time, you begin to question your own judgment. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm too sensitive. Jung called this projection. When others dump their unresolved fears onto you, they avoid facing their own flaws by convincing you that you're the problem. For example, a partner who accuses you of being needy when you express loneliness might be deflecting their own fear of intimacy. The manipulation isn't just in the words, it's in the gaslighting that follows when you protest. I never said that. Uh, you're imagining things. Laughter is a social glue, but in toxic dynamics, it becomes a weapon. A joke about your weight, a sarcastic remark about your career, a teasing comment about your insecurities, all delivered with a smile. If you object, you're labeled humorless or uptight. The group laughs, and you force a smile, dying inside. Jung understood that the unconscious doesn't distinguish between jest and judgment. Repeated mockery, even playful, etches itself into your self-immune. It's a form of symbolic violence, a way to keep you small, to mark you as the group's acceptable target. The joker often does this to deflect their own insecurity. By making you the butt of the joke, they momentarily escape their self-loathing. But you pay the price. Gaslighting isn't just lying. It's systematic reality distortion. You're overreacting. That never happened. You're too dramatic. Over time, these phrases reprogram your mind. You start to distrust your memories, your emotions, your sanity. Jung called this enantiodromia, a tipping point where the psyche, overwhelmed by external lies, turns against itself. The gaslighter's goal isn't to win an argument, it's to make you surrender your perception. For instance, a parent who dismisses your childhood trauma, you had a great life, isn't just denying the past. They're erasing your right to own your story. The result? A fractured self, constantly second-guessing. You share a hurt and hear it's not that bad. You voice a fear and get you're too sensitive. Emotional invalidation is the act of treating your inner world as irrelevant. It's a form of soul neglect, and its damage is profound. When your feelings are routinely dismissed, you learn to mute them. You become a ghost in your own life. present but unseen. Jung warned that repressed emotions don't vanish. They fester, morphing into anxiety, chronic fatigue, or explosive anger. Imagine a child told to stop crying every time they're sad. As an adult, they might numb themselves with work or substances, unable to process grief. Invalidation isn't just cruel, it's a denial of your humanity. These behaviors don't just hurt in the moment, they rewire your psyche. Jung's concept of the shadow explains why every denied emotion, every swallowed protest gets exiled to the unconscious. There, it festers, growing into self-loathing, chronic guilt, or a pervasive sense of fraudulence. For example, tolerating manipulation teaches your brain that your boundaries don't matter. Over time, you stop setting them at all. Laughing at hurtful jokes trains you to associate love with pain. Gaslighting erodes your trust in your own mind, leaving you dependent on others to define reality. Invalidation starves your emotional core, leaving you hollow. The scariest part? You start to replicate the poison. Jung noted that victims of emotional abuse often become perpetrators, not out of malice, but because the toxic patterns feel familiar. The bullied child grows up to bully others. The gaslit partner becomes a gaslighter. It's a cycle of unprocessed pain, passed like a cursed inheritance. Rebellion begins with a single act, naming the unacceptable. Manipulators, gaslighters, and invalidators rely on predictable tactics. Learn their language. When you hear, "You're too sensitive," recognize it as code for, "Your feelings inconvenience me." When someone jokes at your expense, ask yourself, would they say this if I weren't here to laugh? Start a journal. Write down events verbatim after they happen. When gaslighting strikes, consult your own record. Over time, this rebuilds your trust in your perception. Next time someone invalidates you, say, "I'm not asking you to fix this. I'm asking you to acknowledge it." If they refuse, walk away. You don't need consensus to validate your truth. Spend 10 minutes daily naming your feelings without judgment. "I'm angry. I'm hurt." No explanations, no caveats. As reconnects you to your inner compass. This isn't about confrontation, it's about rehabilitation of your instincts, your voice, your right to exist unapologetically. Jung's message wasn't one of despair, but of empowerment. What you resist persists. What you face transforms. You've begun to see the invisible chains, the manipulation, the mockery, the gaslighting. But the journey isn't over. The deepest traps are the ones we mistake for safety, the ones that promise belonging in exchange for our soul. Jung's warning grows darker here, guiding us into the heart of self-betrayal. We're wired for connection, but toxic systems exploit this need, reframing abuse as loyalty and self-erasure as love. Next behaviors are the most dangerous because they're culturally sanctified. They're not just tolerated, they're celebrated. Silence can be a weapon. The cold shoulder, the unanswered text, the dismissive glance, these are acts of emotional exile. Unlike anger, which at least acknowledges your existence, contempt says, "You're not worth my energy." Jung linked contempt to shadow projection. When someone disowns their own flaws by magnifying yours. For example, a friend who ghosts you after you set a boundary might be punishing you for their own guilt. The silent treatment isn't just neglect, it's a power move designed to make you beg for scraps of connection. Good. People sacrifice. Love means putting others first. These cultural mantras turn self-abandonment into a virtue. A mother who neglects her health for her kids. A worker tolerating abuse for a paycheck. Society applauds them as selfless, ignoring the cost, a life unlived. Jung called this identification with a persona when you confuse your worth with your role. caregiver, breadwinner, peacekeeper. Sacrifice becomes an addiction, a way to earn love by disappearing. But no amount of external validation fills the void where your authentic self should be. This is the end game. Staying in toxic relationships because you believe you deserve no better. At least I'm not alone. Maybe if I try harder, they'll change. You tolerate cruelty, deceit, or indifference, clinging to the fantasy that crumbs our feasts. Jung termed this psychic death, the point where you sever from your true self to maintain a lie. It's the abused spouse making excuses, the employee enduring harassment for a pension, the friend laughing at jokes that degrade them. Survival replaces living. These behaviors don't just hurt, they annihilate. Silent contempt teaches you that love is conditional, that you must earn basic respect. Sacrifice erases your desires until you become a hollow shell, efficient and empty. Accepting contempt breeds a Stockholm syndrome-like loyalty to your abusers. Jung's studies on individuation, the process of becoming your true self, reveal the stakes. Every compromise chips away at your potential. The person who stays in a contemptuous marriage to avoid loneliness isn't just unhappy, they're unrealized. Their creativity, passion, and joy atrophy. Worse, these patterns replicate across generations. Children raised by parents who normalize sacrifice learn to equate love with suffering. Those exposed to contempt become either perpetual victims or skilled abusers. It's a cycle of soul murder masked as normalcy. Breaking free demands more than courage. It requires rewriting your sacred contracts with others, with society, with yourself. Start with this sentence. I have allowed underscore because I feared underscore. Brutal honesty dismantles denial. Jung saw anger as a sacred signal, a guardian of boundaries. Next time someone withdraws or disrespects you, let yourself feel the rage. Don't act on it. Just honor it as proof you're still alive. For 1 week, say no to every request that drains you. Not out of spite, but to hear your own voice again. You'll discover who truly values you versus your utility. Toxic systems punish authenticity. Prepare to lose friends, jobs, or family ties. But as Jung promised, what you run from stays with you. What you face becomes your liberation. Jungian therapy often involves active imagination, dialoguing with your inner self. Ask your soul, what life have you been waiting to live? Then take one step toward it, however small. Rebirth isn't pretty. It's messy, terrifying, and lonelier at first. But as you shed the masks, you'll encounter a paradox. The more you honor your truth, the less you need others to validate it. The less you tolerate contempt, the more you attract respect. The less you sacrifice, the more you have to give genuinely. Jung's greatest insight was this: your shadows hold your light. The rage you've suppressed contains your power. The tears you've swallowed water your resilience. The self you've abandoned is waiting, not to judge, but to finally live. This isn't a happy ending, it's a bloody, glorious beginning. The world will try to drag you back to sleep with guilt, with fear, with fake nostalgia for your chains. Don't go. Stay awake, burn brighter, because now you know what you tolerate doesn't just bury you, it buries everyone who needs your light to find their own.